welcome to World Today from our residence here in New Delhi. This week we'd focus on what the world would be talking about in months to come. That's the global economic health. While world leaders, countries, regions, even international bodies such as the United Nations are focusing on how to fight Covid-19, the focus will also be, and conversations are already underway, in how to grapple with the economic crisis that faces the world. We'll also be discussing China's arm twisting tactics as also impact of Covid-19 on the environment. But first up, the headlines.
The coronavirus pandemic will cause a global economic crisis that the international community is trying to grapple with. Disruptions in supply chains and halt in all businesses could lead to a financial crisis worse than the Great Depression, say experts. In an exclusive interview, Indian envoy to the United Nations, Syed Akbaruddin, seeks transparency from China to understand the full extent of the origin and impact of Covid-19. China uses arm-twisting tactics to conceal the truth, but is it profiteering out of the health crisis? Can the Chinese economy revive by merely selling masks and ventilators? And while the pandemic has led to a major crisis, it has given planet Earth some breathing space. Pollution indices across the globe have bettered, but there is growing concern regarding piling up of medical waste.
The coronavirus pandemic is going to land the world in the biggest crisis since World War II. Because of lockdowns, travel restrictions, businesses are coming to a halt. The question is not about whether if there is going to be a global recession, but about how deep it is going to be and how long it is going to last. The most disturbing news this week was about Germany's finance minister committing suicide over the same financial crisis. This week in our Explainer, we are going to deep dive on how the world is going to look economically on the other side of the coronavirus.
In a globalized world, countries are dependent on each other. The coronavirus outbreak has pushed the pause button on the world's biggest economic wheel. The virus has already triggered off a financial crisis. Something like $23 trillion worth of value of shares has been wiped off since mid-Feb. The demand and supply chains have suffered a shock due to the lockdown. Speaking at a special video conference called by United Nations, the International Monetary Fund Managing Director raised concerns over the impact of this pandemic on the global economic health.
A key concern about a long-lasting impact of the sudden stop of the world economy is the risk of a wave of bankruptcies and layoffs that not only can undermine the recovery, but can erode the fabric of our societies.
Let's now do a simple comparison to make you understand what this means. This is a chart of 2008 financial crisis. Over the course of 517 days, the stock markets dropped by 56%. Millions were rendered jobless, homeless. Many financial experts have called it worse than the Great Depression. Now compare that to 2020, and we are yet in the midst of the crisis. Only in March, markets reportedly dropped over 20%. With the shutdown certainly continuing, we are on a downward spiral, a trajectory from where the recovery is going to be difficult. Even in the recession of 2008, it took about 15 months for the world to feel the heat of the recession. The full onslaught is several months away. But the nature of coronavirus means financial catastrophe is inevitable. It will be all-encompassing, impacting supply chains, real estate, share market, tourism, civil aviation, hospitality, entertainment. But one area which has not got enough attention is energy sector, the oil markets that are crashing. The United States, Saudi Arabia, Russia, Iraq, Iran, China and Canada, the world's biggest oil exporters, will have to recalibrate their economic policies.
If people can't consume, people can't work, they can't consume. If they can't consume, the cycle breaks. And consumption losses in India are going to be huge. And these are losses which we can't afford because the people who have a loss of income, don't have savings to fall back upon. So government systems of putting money into their bank accounts still haven't begun. The direct transfer of benefits hasn't taken place.
There is a history of emergencies becoming opportunities for governments. What would our world look like on the other side of the coronavirus outbreak? The decisions that governments and societies take will shape our world for years to come. Politics, public health, economy, culture. We could see a better health system and a change of the way of life as we know it today.
On Spotlight this week is India's envoy to the United Nations, Ambassador Syed Akbaruddin, who joins me from the worst hit cities of United States of America, New York. Many thanks for joining us here on World Today, Ambassador Akbaruddin. The United Nations has come out with a report on the socio-economic impact that Covid-19 would have on global economy. Now, you have participated in virtual conferences not just with Prime Minister Modi, but also with the UNGA. What's your reading of the situation? How grave do things look?
Thank you, Geeta, for providing me an opportunity to interact with you and through you, your large number of viewers. The crisis that we face is the gravest global crisis that we in India have faced since our independence. It is a multidimensional crisis. At the core, it is a global health crisis, the toll of which keeps mounting. It has also metamorphosed into an economic crisis, the likes of which the global economy has not seen in perhaps more than 100 years. The full impact is yet to be comprehended. It is also a social crisis requiring physical distancing in a manner not practiced previously. It is a crisis of international cooperation as each country tries its best to address the needs of its own beleaguered population. Finally, for those of us who are engaged in multilateral cooperation, it is an existential crisis for multilateralism itself. But at the core, it is national governments who are in the lead, who are in the forefront, and who are doing their best to ameliorate the situation that their populations face.
Ambassador Akbaruddin, the world is watching and trying to grapple with the crisis, but they are also looking to China for answers. The Chinese administration has been rather opaque when it comes to the entire crisis. The pandemic is also hiding figures. Will the international community come together and pin responsibility?
If your question is that all of us need to have a full understanding of the phenomenon that has bedeviled us like no other threat, my answer would be yes. We are in a globalized society. Globalization engenders interdependence. And for globalization to proceed smoothly, we need to adhere to global public goods. One such global public good, which is essential for globalization, is sharing of information and understanding of any issue that has a global impact transparently. So, at some stage, if we have to gain a thorough understanding of this entire phenomenon of the coronavirus, we will have to address that issue transparently, scientifically, openly. However, there will be time and space for that when we overcome the current crisis. Let us now work to overcome the existential threats we are all facing.
Ambassador Akbaruddin, as always, it's been a pleasure having you on World Today. Many thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Now, there are a lot of stories doing rounds about China arm twisting the world during such a crisis. There's also profiteering out of it. While there is a lot of truth to China arm twisting the world and also being opaque about operations within China, the same cannot be said about profiteering, because can China, a $14 trillion economy, revive itself from just selling masks and ventilators? Well, let's find out.
A country that is a dictatorship. An economic power, China, thinks that, like its nation, the rest of the world should also follow its orders. But that is only wishful thinking. China did do things that it would have to answer for. To begin with, there are allegations against the World Health Organization for not declaring Covid-19 a pandemic earlier under pressure from Beijing. China was so anxious of the economic crisis that would follow that even forced countries to continue flight operations. Italy was one such country, and look what happened there. There is enough evidence and documentation of evidence to say that there was a delay by Beijing in informing WHO about the coronavirus outbreak. This included muzzling of whistleblowers and those raising questions regarding the new coronavirus. And then, of course, trying to pin the blame on America, which didn't go down well with Trump.
I would like to begin by announcing some important developments in our war against the Chinese virus. We'll be invoking the Defense Production Act just in case we need it.
Why do you keep calling this the Chinese virus? Why do you keep using this?
Because it comes from
it's
China.
Racist.
It's not racist at all, no, not at all. It comes from China.
But then there are reports emerging now that China is trying to make hay while the sun shines. The sun clearly is not shining on anyone, leave alone China. India Today's group editor explains why Beijing should continue worrying.
China needs to worry about another factor that's there. While it has resumed production and has possibly having flights coming in from various countries, just now they're realizing that there could be a fresh problem that is called the second wave. While they've been able to tackle and confine the first wave of infections that's there, the fact that other people are coming into the country could lead to what is called a second wave of infection. Those people are infected from outside. Say they could come if Wuhan and Hubei were quarantined completely. If, for instance, people come into Shanghai and to Beijing and they start spreading it, then what happens is that you have a second wave of infection that is going to impact China. And they have started cancelling flights now. So has South Korea, so has Singapore. The countries that declared that they thought they'd combated the virus. This is not only a silent assassin, but a dangerous one.
Now Beijing is profiteering out of this crisis. Some have reported that the coronavirus that originated in Wuhan was largely confined to Hubei province, and while the world is suffering from the crisis, China kept the most of its main cities and provinces like Shanghai, Beijing, Guangzhou insulated. Management and oversight by other countries cannot be blamed on China. The other question to ask is, has China benefited out of it? China is facing the worst economic crisis in recent history, which is going to set it back many years. Unemployment has gone up, there have been layoffs, and industries shut. While lockdowns have been lifted and the outbreak contained, Chinese companies require the world to start buying, and that is not happening anytime soon. Except for medical equipments, masks, PPE kits and ventilators. This is where there are allegations that now China has started massive production to fill the global requirement of such products, becoming the biggest exporter and capturing the market. The truth is, China was always one of the largest manufacturers of masks, PPE kits, etc. There are also reports that many Chinese companies have moved to producing these medical equipments. China herself faced major shortage at the peak of pandemic and had to import. They started ramping up production to fill their domestic consumption. With situation normalizing, they are now exporting. Also, if you check the pollution map, it is very clear that most of the manufacturing hubs are not in the red. No pollution means no production. Only a few plants have started manufacturing medical equipments. It is not just China. Many countries ask private entities to play during such emergencies. In India, Bharat Electronics Limited is going to manufacture ventilators. Indian auto manufacturers are working to develop and produce ventilators. Some domestic manufacturers have been cleared to make personal protection equipment kits. DRDO is also collaborating with local manufacturers to produce about 20,000 N99 masks per day. A domestic manufacturer, Agwa Healthcare in Noida, has been able to develop suitable ventilators. During World War II, car maker General Motors made guns and tanks to support the US war effort. Now GM, along with the joint venture partner SAIC Motor, is making machines to manufacture surgical masks at a plant in the southern Chinese city of Liuzhou. This is part of an international campaign that has been compared to wartime efforts. UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson also privately met up to 60 UK business leaders to call on companies to help build medical equipments. So while we can leave the blame game for later, do not forget that there is an internal dissent brewing within China as well. These are scenes of clashes with the police from none other than Wuhan. China will have to answer about the correct number of deaths, the origin and the date of origin of the virus. But supplying masks and ventilators certainly cannot revive our economy as huge as China's. This is petty cash for Beijing. When it comes to the question of who will suffer because of the virus, it is the global collective.
Here are some other important stories on the coronavirus pandemic from across the globe in World at a Glance.
As the world continues to grapple with coronavirus pandemic, China has reopened its infamous wet markets, selling bats, pangolins and dogs for human consumption. No new or additional sanitation or operating changes have been announced yet. The reopening of the market is dangerous as scientists suspect these wet markets to be the place where the outbreak might have originated from. Taiwan will donate 10 million face masks to countries struggling with the coronavirus pandemic. The move was announced by Taiwan's President Tsai Ing-wen and has been made under the country's Taiwan Can Help campaign. The move is likely to rile China, which claims Taiwan as a territory and has donated far fewer masks to other countries despite its role in covering up the risk posed by a deadly virus that originated within its borders. While governments of different countries try to impose stringent lockdowns to contain the spread of the deadly virus, Turkmenistan, in an absurd move, has imposed a ban on using the word coronavirus. The country has also banned wearing masks, claiming that no single case of coronavirus was reported in the country. Turkmenistan's government reportedly warned local media or health information brochures against using the name of the virus. The police is reportedly arresting people across Turkmenistan for just talking about coronavirus. Greece has quarantined a migrant camp called Recession after more than 20 asylum seekers tested positive for the coronavirus. The measures came as authorities tested dozens of people in the camp after one of the migrant women was tested positive as she gave birth in a hospital in Athens. Greece's Ministry of Migration has also said that all those who tested positive showed no signs or symptoms. Political leaders across the globe continue to get hit by coronavirus, and the trend is only getting worse. In a latest development, Russian President Vladimir Putin has started working remotely after the head of Moscow's main coronavirus hospital, who met him and shook hands with him, tested positive for the virus. Not just Russia, but corona has reached the top leadership of Israel after its health minister tested positive for the virus, pushing all the top officials, including the Mossad chief and the national security advisor, into self-quarantine. The situation remains grim in Germany as well after Thomas Schäfer, the finance minister of Germany's health state, committed suicide, apparently after becoming deeply worried over how to cope with the economic fallout from the coronavirus.
It is quite clear that the world order will look very different on the other side of the coronavirus outbreak, with US losing supremacy, but China also not having the moral authority to lead. In that, it will be upon the world to come up with a transparent and inclusive world order. Welcome back to World Today. Before the break, we spoke about the impact of COVID-19 on global economy. Let's now talk about its impact on environment. For a climate activist like me, birds chirping, blue skies, no pollution, vehicular in terms of air as well as noise comes as a huge relief. But will that really lead to a changed way of life? Let's take a look at the Planet Barometer. the Environment Index, in this report.
As the coronavirus pandemic arrested global warming temporarily, this has become one of the major talking points when the government is witnessing changing scenarios. Earlier, we saw people wearing masks to save themselves from air pollution. While the masks are here to stay, but not pollution. Now it is to protect themselves from Covid-19. Pollution levels across the globe have dissipated, with many nations on a complete shutdown mode, halting manufacturing, restricting vehicular movement, and closing down offices and public transport systems.
It is today the best, the most accurate instrument to allow measuring air pollution. And there are different gases that can be measured. Carbon monoxide is one, methane is another one. NO2 is particularly interesting because it is produced by traffic and industry.
While seeing wildlife in the streets of cities is a treat to watch, it is also a reminder of how humans usurping their space, their land, taking the conversation to cohabitation. Lockdown and grounded aeroplanes have brought a sudden drop in carbon emissions compared with this time last year. Level of pollution in New York has reduced by nearly 50%. In China, emissions fell by 25% at the start of 2020, and coal use reduced by 40% at China's sixth largest power plant. In Europe, satellite images show nitrogen dioxide emissions fading away in northern Italy, Spain and UK. Air and water have become cleaner. One report even suggests that the ozone layer is healing.
The canal is definitely clearer. You just have to look at the canal when water is very calm. There are no boats, there is no traffic. Definitely it is cleaner.
Some experts say the reduction in pollution may have saved more lives than the death toll caused by the deadly virus in China. According to rough calculations done by Stanford University, scientist Marshall Burke, the reduction in air pollution may have helped save lives of 77,000 people in China under the age of 5 and over 70. While many climate activists are breathing easy, some are also worried about the adverse impact the virus has had on the environment. Countries, particularly China and Hong Kong, are drowning under medical waste produced by hospitals. In the city of Wuhan alone, the volume of medical waste is reported to have quadrupled to more than 200 tons a day. Single-use medical items that have been in contact with the infected patients must be burnt to prevent further contamination that could occur during recycling. While nature just hit the reset button, will it last post-COVID-19?
Hi everyone, Preeti Chaudhary here. Hope you like this video. For latest news and analysis, like and subscribe to the India Today YouTube channel. And don't forget to press the bell icon to stay updated. Thank you for watching.